John Purcell, welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you.
I don't know whether I should call you John Purcell or whether I should call you Natasha Walker, so let's get the name out of the way straight away. How did you come up with your pseudonym?
It's rather banal, actually. Having sold books for so long, I realised that such an author of erotic literature and the like, they come out with some really bad names, innuendos and the like, and I thought it'd be probably best to have a very basic, forgettable kind of Anglo name that that the title will be the thing that people talk about, not the name of the author. To sort of go back in the background a little bit, because I wasn't going to give an autobiography, I wasn't going to do many interviews about it. I thought, well, the further back and a non-entity the author name is, the better for the series.
So when did you first get the idea of doing this? When did you start writing these books?
Oh, this is a long time ago. 2000, 2001. I wrote. This is all the product of my early 30s, and it's been revamped since 50 Shades. But I wrote a whole range of stories based on Emma. When I found Emma, I thought, well, this is great. I can write a whole lot of stories about this woman and get into a lot of trouble, and she's always on the ball and knows what she's doing. So it was great fun. And because I was writing for women that I knew at the time, I was just writing stories for friends. They all wanted to be in the driver's seat. They didn't want to be reading about some big burly man coming into some naive young girl's life.
Control is the issue here. Who's in charge? And I suppose that's the point of difference, isn't it? Particularly with 50 Shades. So you say that you wrote these books pre-50 Shades and then you revamped them in the light of the success of 50 Shades. So was that for you the key point of difference? Was that you were putting women in charge sexually?
Yeah, and that's what interests me as well. I've always been more interested in great female characters than in male characters. I find a lot of the male characters do very expected things, and reading the great writers, I've always found women far more challenging, and so I've always found the women I've been involved with personally to be challenging in what they want. They may take my confidence in my being one of the lucky ones, being a white male in a moderate middle class society, and use that base to then go and explore things on their own, and that terrified me a lot of the time. It was very challenging to try and keep up with a lot of the desires, a lot of the fantasies, a lot of the expectations.
So if you were writing these for girlfriends, so I kind of am imagining you as a sort of male Scheherazade writing these stories as a form of seduction, were you getting feedback then from your girlfriends saying, no, not that, my fantasy is this? I mean, was that the kind of way it worked?
There certainly were comments like that. What I did, because everyone was so different and everyone had different opinions, and every partner you ever come to says this is the way I like it, and the next partner will say this is the way I like it, and we should be doing this, and this really turns me on. It's like whenever whoever picks up Nancy Friday for the first time, My Secret Garden, and you see just the astonishing variety of people's perversions, and it's mind-boggling. So when I set upon Emma, I tried to keep true to her. So a lot of it came down to that wouldn't happen, but I don't mind. I'm interested to see where it goes, or this is too short. It needs to be longer. Don't blow it all in 5 pages. Let it go out for another 25.
Why is it so important that Emma is married at the start of this adventure?
Because that's where books finish. I've always loved the idea of the life beyond marriage. You know, that this is the, and also Emma is not. She doesn't get married for the reasons that a lot of women get married. She got married because he wanted to get married. She got married because it was something that rolled on. She had this character had no idea that she was going to fall so heavily for this man. When she first met him, he was a bit of fun, and he was completely different to her. He was conservative, he was successful, he was a banker, had all these things that were all wrong, but enjoyed them because they were all wrong. The longer she went into a relationship, she realised that she had much greater feelings for him and that he was a much greater person than she first suspected. And by then it was too late to tell him the truth about who she really was.
It's also the case that people think of marriage as the kind of great end of sort of sexual passion as well.
Mm. Yeah, and that's what happened to her. Although everything was fine, you know, the relationship was fine and the sex life was fine, her past experiences and the person she was hoping for more. And there's a line, I think, somewhere in the early part of it, she put on marriage like a pair of sexy high heels or something. So it was another accessory, and she thought, well, here's a great chance to go out there and play. But she found that he wasn't willing to bend or to move on that. When she tests him, especially in book 2, she tests whether or not he can cope with her, and she finds that he can't. And
he can by book 3.
Yeah, by book three, she's tested him. He's failed, and she wanders off and leaves him. Now he has the opportunity then to get on with his normal life, but he's had Emma in his life, and life seems rather dull from that point on, and he starts to examine what it was about her. So then he chases after it.
What other erotic fiction have you read that you've particularly liked? I mean, give us your top 3 sexy books of all time.
My first readings of erotic writing came about through accident. I picked up a Henry...
Everybody says that.
No, but really good stuff. I mean, I was reading Henry Miller. I didn't realise it was... I mean, I was an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and picked up a literary book, and you don't know until you're further into it that there's all this amazing... I didn't know anything. I'm the kind of guy that turned up in France and said they speak French all the time. At 18, I was a complete nincompoop. And so when I was reading this Henry Miller and I found these scenes in it, I was drawn to them because they were so much like sex scenes that had happened in life. They were awkward, they were messy, they were spontaneous, short. There was all these different things that came up, and I really found that refreshing. And I found that relation directly back to my life as refreshing. So when I was writing Emma and Jason, to get the awkwardness, to get the fear in Jason's of doing something wrong, or of overstepping the line, of having no power in this situation, was all things that I had experienced in my life, not as explicitly, although I did dream of a neighbour. But it was that realism. I really wanted to tap down to some really awkward things that shouldn't happen. And if you read them, there's lots of things that don't actually eventuate. They get to a certain point, and either one of them freaks out and runs off. And I can see that as quite natural. I want that naturalism in there.
Now, in your life, your double life, wearing your other hat as a bookseller, you obviously have looked across the spectrum of this genre, which has exploded since 50 Shades, which was obviously the game changer. Can you understand the success of this genre that we're now calling mummy porn? What is different about this from the pornography that we've had lying around for decades?
I think the biggest difference is the mainstream anointed it. It allowed it to be. I mean, the difference between my reaction when I first signed the contract with Random, and I was trying to keep my erotic writing distant from me. I was worried about work. I was worried about family. I was worried about friends and the like. And because 50 Shades rolled on and kept rolling on, everyone's opinion changed. It changed across. I mean, even our accountant came up to me at some point and said, "Have you heard of this book, 50 Shades?" I knew then that the world had changed, and that the people were reading erotica, and it wasn't considered to be anything unusual.
Do you think that there's any synergy there, or any connection with the fact that porn is now so widely available on the internet that in a sense porn is flooding the culture through every different kind of medium, and publishing was kind of the last to catch on?
Yeah, I'd say that. I mean, one of the things that that has happened because of the internet and porn is that unfortunately sex has become as a lot of the things I was describing earlier, the fear and the terror and the smells and all that sort of stuff, all all the gritty, realistic stuff has been moved out of it. It's all about positions and how long and how big and all, and it's very, very sanitized. People are having surgery to change the looks of their parts. You know, it's so that side. I think one of the reasons fiction has done so well in a lot of areas is that it's giving back some of the human stuff back into the sex, the fears, the anxieties, the growth, the journey. You know, the characters go on. That's all back, and that's not in any porn.
What about language, John? Because the language of erotic fiction has a vocabulary that hasn't changed much. Did you struggle with that, to kind of use the vocabulary that's available? Were you thinking, I'd like to come up with some new words for these pink bits?
It's very difficult. It's unfortunately, a lot of publishing won't allow the other words for the pink bits and all that sort of thing. The writing of it, I tried to make it as banal as possible, because I've always found it interrupting when someone's tried to come up with a new word and starts talking about mangoes in the middle of it all. It doesn't. To me, it wanders off the path, and it's. I mean, we don't. One of the things in sex is that you don't want to think about sex while you're having sex. It's an awkward thing. It's a weird thing. You don't really want to have your rational brain in the middle of it all. So I tried to make the language disappear, and make and create a scene with as banal language as I possibly can, so that no one will be turning on the fluorescent light in the middle of it all with a word like mango, which doesn't fit.
Right, or a word that, say, someone didn't know, which would mean that they would have to reach for the dictionary at a particularly steamy point, which would also be an interruption.
Yeah. Well, I have seen some very awkward scenes with clinical language, medical language used to try and cover. There are lots of different euphemisms that are in her sex, and which it's almost like pushing it outside the room. You know, if you're an erotic writer, you shouldn't be afraid to use, you know, cock and cunt, but they're really the words.
So if you're saying that there are words that publishers find taboo, and they're not words like cunt.
No, that was the word. I've only got one in the whole book, in the whole series. That was the word that just kept taken out. And yet, my experience, even though everyone hates the word, I've not met anyone that I've been involved with, or friends who haven't found that word appropriate at certain times. And it's not a derogatory word in those moments. It's a word that's so taboo. It's the last word we have, and that's always been sexy, using things that are taboo. So the only time that word's used is when one of the characters calls someone else one, which is the only time it's actually used derogatory in a derogatory way. So that's it.